community safe, in helping to identify those involved, as well as providing the critical statements that we needed in order to obtain this murder warrant, the victim of which was Mr. Cantor. My heart truly goes out to Mr. Cantor's family. I hope this brings some measure of relief and justice for them. I also pray that the other victims in this case continue to heal and have a measure of relief as well in knowing that this investigation continues and those that are responsible will be held accountable. I'm going to turn it over to our District Attorney, Jose Garza, to provide updates from his perspective, from the prosecution side of this. I have to thank DA Garza and his assistant district attorneys that have worked right alongside this whole way with our investigators, making sure that we're putting together a solid case.
Before you do that, Chief, can you quickly give us the spelling of our suspect, Mr. White?
The last name is common spelling. First name is DE''ONDRE, and then middle name is JERMIRRIS. DeAndre Jamiris White. DA Garza.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. As we gather this morning for an update on the shooting that took place on June 12th on 6th Street, I and our entire team continue to think about the victims and their families. We continue to think about Douglas John Cantor, Jessica Ramirez, and all of the victims of that senseless act of violence. I also remain grateful to the Austin Police Department, to EMS and firefighters and all of the first responders that undoubtedly saved lives that night. Since the start of this investigation into the shooting, the attorneys who lead the Homicide and Major Crimes Unit in the District Attorney's Office have been working collaboratively with APD detectives to ensure that the person responsible for this shooting is held accountable. I'm also grateful to APD for their determined pursuit of the relevant facts and evidence in this case. The evidence collected at this point in the investigation, as the Chief just laid out, suggests that we have identified the shooter who is responsible for the death and injuries that took place in our community. As the Chief said, APD is currently searching for him, and we believe that with the help of the public and other law enforcement agencies, he will be in custody soon. When he is apprehended, he will be charged with murder. Last week, one juvenile was arrested and charged with deadly conduct, and one 17-year-old, Mr. Tab, was arrested and charged with aggravated assault. This morning, we are dismissing the charges against Mr. Tab and the juvenile arrested in the aftermath of the shooting. At this point in the investigation, dismissing these charges is what is in the best interest of this investigation, and ensuring that we are able to put forward the best case we can as we focus on the person who is primarily responsible for the injury and death that took place on 6th Street. Our office has not made final charging decisions with respect to either young man or anyone involved in this case for that matter. And as the investigation continues, we will continue to evaluate the conduct of everyone involved. I also want to thank the public who have helped move this investigation along and who I know will continue to ensure that everyone who is responsible will be apprehended and held accountable. We are at this point happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Garza, so the 15-year-old and the 17-year-old who brought weapons to 6th Street will not be facing any charges as of this point?
Our focus right now is on holding accountable the person who is responsible for the injuries and death that took place on 6th Street. What is in the best interest of the investigation, of ensuring that we can build the best case possible against the person responsible for that death and those injuries, is to dismiss these cases. We have not made any final decisions. with respect to charging of those two individuals or anyone else.
Does the DA's office or the Austin Police Department have a statement about how those people were arrested and are now being let go? It seems like potentially the people who were not responsible were arrested. And is there a statement? Is that correct? Is that incorrect? Is there a statement that y'all want to give about that?
Well, I'll let the chief speak if he wants with more detail about the investigation, but what I will say, and I think what is important, is that this investigation is ongoing, is evolving as we speak and has been evolving, and that the district attorney's office and the Austin Police Department have been working very closely for the last several weeks to ensure that we can build the best case possible to hold the people responsible for the injuries and death accountable.
Hey, before the chief comes in, I got a question in regards to the charges of the two teenagers.
Sure.
Are you letting them walk out today and go back home? And what about the pending charge in Killeen and how this all happened? Because apparently this young man, Tab, is already identified as a possible shooter in another case. So is that in the best interest of our community to let these two walk out right now? And what's going to happen to their guns?
I can't speak to any potential charges in Killeen. What I can say is that what is necessary to ensure that we have the strongest case possible against the person who committed
I
murder.
understand that. I hear you on that, but you're talking about releasing two individuals related to a violent shooting on 6th Street, and we know a violent shooting in Killeen, and you say it's in the best interest of this community to let these two walk out.
Well, what I said was it is in the best interest of this prosecution. It is in the best interest of this investigation to be able to hold the person who committed this murder and who committed these acts of violence accountable.
Are you releasing these two teenagers back into the community today?
As I said, this morning our office is dismissing charges against both young people.
And that's releasing them into the community, sir?
I want to make just a clarifying statement I think is important to make, that we respect the DA's decision. He has to make decisions based on what he thinks is going to put forward the best case in the end. I also want to make sure that people understand that these two individuals were involved. Okay, this is not people who were innocent bystanders or somehow incorrectly identified as being involved in this case. I think that is important for people to understand, and that in the end, these individuals had weapons and might have otherwise done greater harm to our community. So as we go through these cases, we make decisions based upon the evidence on whether to charge, how important it is to charge sooner than later. And those decisions were made jointly between the police department and the district attorney's office. And I am very glad that we are charging now this individual, Mr. White, with the murder.
Is there no concern about what message that sends to the community, though, if those two were involved and they're getting released?
Well, let me just say that when the time comes, we will evaluate the totality of the evidence in this case as this investigation moves forward. And if the evidence bears it out, both people will be appropriately charged. We continue to examine the conduct of everyone involved. This investigation is ongoing. And as we have all of the evidence we need to make final charging decisions, we will.
Chief, you don't have to wait for him to give you the green light to charge. Your officers right now, based on the PCs that we said, we've read, based on your statements just now, these two individuals were involved. So are officers, detectives right now filing new affidavits to keep these individuals from coming back on our streets?
I think that the DA has indicated that he is not going to pursue charges at this moment against those individuals. It doesn't make sense to refile and have them redismissed. We filed them because we had the probable cause to file them. And as that progresses, the DA has also, I think, indicated that he will make final charging decisions when all of this comes together at the end.
You have probable cause. You have witnesses' statements, and you just said yourself that these individuals had guns on the street, underage, involved, actively involved. So why are we not processing paperwork right now to keep these individuals from walking out that door.
The paperwork has been processed. The decision to charge or not lies with the DA's office.
Is it
Did
correct
they
to
make
say
some
those
sort of deal to identify this guy or testify or something?
I'm obviously not going to get into our litigation strategy or conversations that we're having with defense counsel or anyone else. What I will say is that what we are focused on, what our responsibility is to hold the person who committed murder and who injured 13 people on our streets a couple of weeks ago accountable. That is our focus, and what we are doing right now is ensuring that we have the best case possible in order to do that.
Can you give us more information about Mr. White? You said that he belonged to rival groups. One, can we say that he was a part of a rival gang? You've hesitated to use that word. And then two, anything more about him? Is he, sort of a top dog? Is he, a leader of some sorts?
Yeah, I'm not going to put any information out that I don't know for certain. So I don't know that for a certainty. I know that we had two groups that were that had disagreements with one another, and that part is still under investigation.
How about his weapon, which you said was tied to other violent crimes? What violent crimes, and do you anticipate other charges for previous crimes arising?
So the other crimes that are involved in that are still under investigation. I don't want to jeopardize those investigations at this point. I think it's important to just know that that we're trying to tie all of this together and to make sure that we solve as many as we can.
You know where he is? You feel like you're going to be able to make an arrest soon?
We are working on that right now.
Is it correct to say that the two initial suspects, Mr. Tab and the juvenile, did they fire their guns?
That's part of the investigation right now, and I can't say with certainty, but I would say that we don't have clear evidence of that at this point. As we've gotten more video evidence and more witness statements, that is becoming less clear. And so what I can tell you for certain is that they had weapons, and the investigation continues.
Will those weapons be released to them?
They will not.
And one thing I want to clarify, the 14 victims in this event, were they all gunshot victims, or did they all have gunshot wounds?
They did.
And which group was Mr. White with? Because we had two different groups, and I wasn't clear on was he just a third party?
No, he was involved in the same group as Mr. Tab.
Is he also from Killeen?
He is.
Is he connected to the shooting in Killeen?
I don't have any information on that.
What kind of gun did he have?
I'm not going to release that right now. It's part of the investigation.
With Mr. Tab, are you going to release him to the Killeen Police Department?
We're working directly with Killeen PD, and I don't know that they're going to come down and pick him up or issue a warrant. That's up to them at this point.
Can you give a statement in Spanish?
Sure, what would you like?
Anything, give us an update on what happened.
Okay. Soy muy emocionado que ahora tenemos un orden para arresto tercera para una persona que hizo disparó a muchas personas, incluido Mr. Douglas Cantor, y tenemos un orden para murder con un bond de $1 million y la persona todavía no está en custodia, pero nosotros están trabajando para agarrarlo y ponerlo en la cárcel ahora.
Speak to the community and ask them for help in getting him.
Y si miembros de la comunidad tienen información sobre este crimen, por favor llamen la 911 o puedes llamar la tip line de paradas de crimen para quedar anónimo. Pero si tienes información, por favor, si puedes llamar.
Can you explain, or at least share, the complexity of a case like this? It's thankfully Austin hasn't dealt with many of these in many years in terms of the number of victims counted. So just share a little bit about what it's like in law enforcement to track down these people. Obviously, you're getting help from a lot of high-profile agencies, and then the same question to you, sir, about prosecuting when it comes down to a crime of this size.
So I think it's important to remember, I made this statement very early on the morning of. This was a chaotic scene. I had thousands of people on 6th Street. that were running in all different directions. We had officers that were in the area, immediate area, but based on how dense it was at that moment, it was very difficult for them to be able to pick out exactly who a shooter was at that moment. So, of course, as the information starts coming in, that information always seems to change, and sometimes we will get information that proves to be incorrect. We quickly identified the right people in this case, and we charged them at the time appropriately. I think that as the case progresses and as we actually kind of zeroed in on the right person, the person who actually pulled the trigger and is responsible for the multiple shootings, that everybody kind of came together to work on making sure that we were putting together a very good case. But it is very difficult and complex.
Chief, do you think that all the shots were fired?
If you don't mind, I'm going to get to his question, then we'll get yours next. So let me just say that we take acts of violence, particularly murder, incredibly seriously in the district attorney's office. That is why this year we created a major crime and homicides unit of prosecutors who are specifically designated to work alongside APD's homicide and major crimes unit to provide the support that they need as these kinds of complex crimes go forward. We have two of our most seasoned prosecutors assigned to this case, who, as the chief said, have been working alongside APD every step of this process to support their investigation and to ensure that we have the best possible case as we go forward.
Chief, I was reading the affidavit and that there were several shell casings that were collected and linked to believably one gun fired. In this incident, is it believed that White was the only individual who allegedly fired shots, or were there shots fired by other individuals?
Right now, we're still evaluating that. What we know for sure is that Mr. White shot. And based on the ballistic evidence, witnesses, the video evidence I talked about, we feel very certain that this is our shooter who caused these injuries. Whether or not other individuals shot or not is that we're going to figure that out as the investigation continues.
And I apologize. How many weapons have been recovered, and any of those weapons tied to the murder of Mr. Campbell?
So that is still part of the ongoing investigation. I can't really, without jeopardizing it, talk about exactly how many weapons we've recovered. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.